And our next speaker for today is Vipul Jain. Welcome, Vipul. I can see you are already here. Thanks for your time over the weekend.
Thanks a
And
lot. Yeah.
and thanks for helping the community. So I see your posts and the things that you post over LinkedIn to help the community grow. So for the viewers, Vipul is an architect working in Bosch, Bangalore, and I have learned so many things from him over the past few years. So thank you so much, Vipul, for your contribution. And we often talk about Power Platform and these things, but we ignore the security and the governance aspect of it. So today's session is focused on the overall security and the governance part. And without much ado, I will hand it over to Vipul.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining. So, first of all, I just really want to thank Sanjeev sir for an amazing session, the previous session, because it actually also motivates me to work in different technologies because I saw today a blend of maybe a mix of or a blend of server side, client side, IoT, and stuff like that. So, it was a very wonderful session, Sanjeev sir. All right. So with that, I will start sharing my screen. Just please let me know once it's visible. Um,
It's visible.
Great. Thanks. So here in this session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Power Platform security and governance. Just for the latency purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my video um, so that there are no hiccups. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the presenter mode. Yep. So in this session, we are going to talk about Power Platform security and governance. Um, First of all, this is a topic which is more directed towards, let's say, the admin part of it, admin part of Power Platform. But I will try to make the session as much useful for you. There will be definitely key takeaways after this session. So, first of all, a brief about me. My name is Vipul. I am a solution architect of M365 and Power Platform, currently working in Bangalore. You can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn or any other social media channel if you want to connect with me offline or any knowledge information you want to get related to M365 and Power Platform. So this session, I'm going to more focus on security and governance. But before that, I just want to thank to the organizers, Delhi Tech community. You guys are really doing a really great job bringing all the like-minded people and sharing the thoughts across the community. So I really want to thank each one of you, and I really want to state the name as well in this call: Aro, Dhruvin, Abhinav, Prince, Rohit, S. Gomti, Rajendra, and Kumar Ranjan. So thanks for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts based on the security and governance related to Power Platform. So this is the agenda for today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the introduction in terms of what is security all about, governance all about, why it's so much of paramount importance. Although, just to let you know, I also come from a development background, currently working as a solution architect. I also come from dev background. But over these years, I what I realized is that as you grow during the in the ladder, you also have to know how of the security and governance because as an architect, let's say for example, I always think about creating a scalable solution. Just one example, but creating a scalable solution also comes with it the security and governance part of it, and that's where I thought of this session to share whatever has Microsoft has come up with the new things in security and governance and operations so that I can share it here. So I'll start with introduction, some low code assets I'll talk about that you need to govern and secure. I'll talk about managed security, governance, and operation. At the end of the session, I will share some of the my recommendation and best practices. So just to start with, just to set the storyline, you might be thinking that why the world is moving towards modernization, right? We were in the on-premise world earlier. We are still there, but why everyone is talking about modernization? Let's say modern apps, power apps, power automate, power platform. So I've just figured out these some of the factors maybe which leads for any organization. And after this session, I'm pretty sure, just to give you a guarantee here, that you will be talk about more about security and governance with your clients within your organizations. So basically, these are some of the factors which I thought that are really the drivers which basically leads to the thought process that why I need a modernization for any given example, let's say in any organization. So it could be, let's say my existing solution is very too expensive to maintain. I want to enable mobile use. I want to improve the performance. I have some technical depths and so on. So these are basically some of the modernization drivers. Now, we all are talking about agents, right? Nowadays, copilot, agents, how to do that. So I've just categorized them into, let's say, three categories, be it a simple agent, a medium agent, and an advanced agent. Agents definitely, when I say simple, medium, and advanced, I have just bifurcated them in terms of because they might differ in their complexity and the capabilities. Because let's say when you think about agents, right? You build through, let's say, Agent Builder, Copilot Studio. The simple ones, they are really just, I'm thinking of a retrieval agents. Just they retrieve the data using Microsoft Graph. They just read the data only. They can be published very directly to Microsoft 365. And as a result, they are governed by default out of the box. You don't have to do much over there. But when we talk about agents where they connect to, let's say, thousands of connectors, for example, task, you doing some tasks, taking some actions when asked. So you are connecting with thousands of connectors. There comes the real need basically of the power platform ecosystem where these are performing tasks autonomously. If I talk about these advanced connectors, so there are connectors, let's say, which do the task autonomously. There the real need comes of the power platform, let's say, security and governance. Now, when we talk about this challenge we see of security and governance, for example, across the agents, and here I just want to say that this is not the challenge we see with agents. It could be related to Power Apps, it could be related to Power Pages, Copilot Studio, or Power Automate. So the challenge which I'm talking about to do that exhaustive governance and security when your, let's say, agent or app becomes more advanced, then it is not related to only agents. It's also applies to Power Apps, whether it's Power Pages and the other sub products within the suite of Power Platform. So it's the same set of challenges basically we have means needs to be addressed basically across the Power Platform when we are talking about different suites of products. And of course, now we know the solution is that if you have to implement a Power Platform wide governance, that is through managed environments. That's the solution, and Microsoft is also recommending that the solution to implement this platform wide governance. When I say platform wide governance, it could be to any products or sub product, Power Apps, Power Pages, Power Automate, or Copilot Studio. So basically the managed environment. So if you have not heard about managed environments, I have just kept a slide, a very quick slides that what are managed environments. You can definitely make any of your environment within Power Platform as a managed environment. I will showcase that what is an environment if you are new to it. Basically, environment is nothing but a container within a Power Platform, a boundary where you develop your different objects, or let's say Power Apps or Power Automate flows and stuff like that. But what are managed environments? Managed environments, I will say, is a suite of premium capabilities. I'm using a word premium here just to let you know, guys, because you see here I've also mentioned a note with respect to the licensing. When I say licensing, obviously it's a complex topic as usual to understand. But if you have to be very cautious when you are maybe making your environment as a managed environment because it only comes with the premium capabilities. Now, what is this managed environment? Now, managed environment comes with many features. It unlocks many features. Some of them I've listed on this slide, whether it's environment groups, data policies, pipelines, logbox. I will definitely go into the details and demo in this today's sessions. Some of these capabilities, definitely customer managed key, CMK. Maybe some of these words might be new for you, but just for the time being, please be with me. And in few moments and few minutes, I'm going to demo all these things to you, that how you can definitely use it within Power Platform Admin Center. And I'm going to show you the new experience of Power Platform Admin Center as well. So please go ahead with managed environments. This is the solution which Microsoft is also recommending. Now, the thing is that what are your factors? Because threats and let's say phishing and all these things are too much nowadays, right? So you have to protect your environment altogether. So let's say if I am a CISO, which is, let's say, Chief Information and Security Officer, or I work into that department, I would always think that how can I protect my data from external threats? How can I prevent exfiltrations? How can I stay compliant with the regulations, and how can I access the risk. So if I'm in let's say CISO or in a security department of any organization, I would always think of these factors. As a CIO, maybe I would be thinking, how can I ensure that solutions people are building to follow the guidelines? How can I get experts to review the agents which my team is building? How can I drive the cost efficiency and ROI, which is return on investment, whatever my company is doing or what I'm doing on my organization? So as a CIO, these will be my thought process. As operations directors, definitely I will think that how can I deploy complex solutions at scale? And as a technical architects as well, or solution architects as well, you must be always thinking that how can I deploy something which is scalable, which is flexible, which is robust, and stuff like that. And the last but not the least, how do I get notified when there are critical solutions that are not properly working? So all these are maybe some of the factors which definitely leads to a thought process wherein we say that, hey, why I need the security, why I need the governance altogether. Because when I think about these factors, let's not as a CISO, CIO at that level, but let's as a solution architect as well, while designing the technical solution for a given problem, I always think about these factors. So that's where Microsoft has already introduced, let's say, a long back managed environments, which gives us more visibility, more control with less effort. So definitely, as I talked about earlier, also managed environments. Please remember, there's a key takeaway in this session. That the first takeaway, I will say that if you are going to use managed environments within Power Platform, definitely please be cognizant of the licensing part of it. It comes with the premium licenses. But at the same time, if I talk about managed environments, which helps a lot in the governance and security of your platform altogether, it comes with more control, with obviously less effort, which I'm going to talk and demo you today. But with this, not only managed environments, Microsoft has also very recently announced a new pillar, which is called managed security. So when I say managed security, it brings together, let's say, all the capabilities that you need to secure your, let's say, low code apps, agents, and automations. So not only managed environments, now we have another pillar which we should always consider when we talk about, let's say, security and governance in Power Platform, that is managed security. Now, another pillar or layer which Microsoft has very recently introduced again is managed operations. So when we talk about managed operations, how you can bring, I remember in one of the chat recently, some of you have asked a question, how can I move my solution or an app from one environment to another environment, right? So how you can operate in a very managed way. So that is the solution here, which is app lifecycle management or ALM. So with app lifecycle management, it comes pipelines, it comes CI/CD concepts like that, test automations using test engines, which also brings kind of a layered solution or a managed solution across all your apps, automation, and agents. Not only this, managed environments now is evolving as a managed governance. Now, earlier it was managed environments. I will say now they're also evolving it in terms of managed governance, better representing those governance capabilities. Because at the end of the day, the goal of the Power Platform or any platform per se with you is to have a managed capability so that you can scale adoption as well as you can reduce the risk with your enterprise, right? So that's where the solution comes into picture. That today I'm going to talk about this, particularly these three pillars: managed governance, managed security, and managed operations. I believe you guys are with me till here. um, I understand this comes from admin, more of an admin perspective. Maybe let's say you are working with cross departments in your organization, let's say with infrastructure team, with cloud management team, or maybe let's say cybersecurity team within your organization. But the concepts like this, you should be able to talk and understand that what is managed governance, managed environments, managed security, and managed operation. And that's the whole target of this session. Now, I will talk about shared responsibility for security, right? This, again, one of the key takeaway, the second key takeaway for this session is that the main approach to secure the Power Platform as a platform is the shared responsibility model. So we have heard about back in the days of, let's say, on-premise systems, right? On-premise development, where the customer or the companies, basically organization which are responsible for securing all the aspects of their technology stack. Let's say all the way from hardware and the data center, physical security, all the way to the infrastructure in the application layer, right? But with the companies like Microsoft and others, they come with some other delivery or infrastructure models, for example, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. But with respect to Power Platform, the key takeaway here is, which I want to let you know, that Power Platform is architected as a SaaS application. This is the most important key takeaway, which you can take and you can talk about within your maybe with your clients and organization, that Power Platform basically is architected is as a SaaS solution. When I say SaaS solution, it's software as a service. And what that means is that Microsoft is actually responsible for security at those layers. You can see these layers right on my right away on my screen. That where Microsoft is responsible, you can see Microsoft is responsible for your network controls, operating systems, physical networks, physical host, and stuff like that. And at the same time, the customers who are using this platform, let's say Power Platform, they can also define their comprehensive governance and security. They can define their security controls by building on a secure foundation. And that foundation, definitely, I'm talking about is Azure. So please remember that, as I mentioned, Power Platform is architected as a SaaS solution. And this SaaS solution is very well secured on top of Azure because this is sitting on top of Azure. So you have a secure platform which is built on Azure because, as we all know, Azure offers a series of best in class, maybe services like, for example, identity management, key management, and so forth that we can build on in the Power Platform so that we don't have to keep on rebuilding those or think about these kind of features like technologies, whether it's operating system, network controls. We can always take the advantage of the latest innovations which is happening on Azure, and that will definitely be available in Power Platform as well. So the idea here is that you have to really understand that you are working in Power Platform, but what is the underlying security and maybe governance model on top of it the Power Platform is sitting on? So as I mentioned, it is sitting on Azure, it is sitting on M365 security controls, which brings the latest, maybe the innovation in those spaces. So it's really important to understand about the responsibilities between you as a customer of Power Platform or Microsoft, what you are going to do, what you are going to govern within your organization, and what the Microsoft is taking responsibility on it. So this is really, really important to understand. Now I'll start with Power Platform Admin Center. So that was just the introduction part of it. I just covered that what are the key factors, modernization drivers, and what are the different pillars I'm going to talk about in this session, whether it is managed governance, managed security, or managed operations. But now from here, I'm going to also take you away to the Power Platform Admin Center, where I'm going to demo and showcase that different, maybe some of the functionalities and the preview features which are already in preview, although, but it's always good to know about those. So I will start with managed security. So Power Platform Admin Center, and especially the new experience, because in the new experience now we have hubs, whether it's a security hub, licensing hub, deployment hub, and stuff like that, which I'm going to show you now. So I'll start with managed security. So when we talk about security, right, and it's a managed security pillar which we are talking about, the main intention is to safeguard and guardrail your organization digital data or digital landscape with, let's say, hub security features. As I mentioned, Microsoft has introduced a security hub. You can see it in the new Power Platform Admin Center. So I will talk about these some of the features now. Security posture management, where you can have intelligent guidance for scalability and efficient enterprise grade security. Data protection and privacy. You can have customer managed keys. You can have integration with Purview, Microsoft Purview, and stuff like that. You can have advanced connector policies, TLP policies. Identity and access management, definitely IP firewall, IP cooking, and stuff like that. With compliance, it's a very important, again, pillar when it comes to managed security. You can have a feature called Logbox. I'm going to show you now. And the last one, not last but not the least, is the threat detection or threat protection. So threat protection, so Microsoft has also integrated with Sentinel, which is Microsoft Sentinel, which sits again on top of Azure. So you can have all the data check of your Power Platform data, which is residing, let's say, in DataVerse or some other data sources. You can definitely secure it using managed security. So before proceeding forward, maybe I will take you through the Power Platform Admin Center. What I will do is you can see this, the new experience of the Power Platform Admin Center. Definitely, you can toggle between the old. This is the old view of the Power Platform Admin Center. You can toggle from this toggle button, try the new Admin Center. I'm going to take you through this complete journey of this new Power Platform Admin Center. All right. So you can see here different security hub on the left navigation. Security hub is the prominent one, which I'm going to talk about as we are talking about managed security. So you see here, first of all, this security gives you an overview page. This is topmost important to understand that what this overview page is offering you. Although currently it's not showing me in my tenant, but I have just kept a screenshot for you guys just to let you know that with particular security overview in the security hub, which is generally available, what you can do now. So if you see on my screen, this is just a screenshot from some other tenant. You can get your security score, which is really, really superb. um, if you're secure, if your, let's say, security score is going down, let's say 20%, 70%, it will give you the recommendation now that what are the security failures or security threats you are having within your Power Platform and how can you improve it. Once you improve it, let's say for example, you have built an agent. I'm just giving an example. You have built an agent, and let's say it is not published, for example, and it is sitting idle. It will definitely give you the recommendation now in the security hub that, let's say, your agent is sitting there, it's not shared with so many people, stuff like that. And you can definitely improve your security score. So let's say if you start with 20%, 30%, keep checking this as a Power Platform admin precisely. As I earlier mentioned in my starting of the session, that this is majorly towards the admins, but as a developer or as an architect, for example, when you are designing and defining the solutions, you should also be aware and cognizant that what is going on behind the scenes. And that's where the solution hub comes into picture, where you can definitely see the trends for your security score, the different categories, whether it's related to network security, access controls, whether it's related to threat detections, compliance, and stuff like that. And you can keep on checking your score, because at the end of the day, the idea is that you have to really improve your score, because you have to protect and prevent your data from the external threats. That's the ultimate goal of this exercise, right? Security. Now, coming back to the Power Platform Admin Center, I'll start with data privacy, data and privacy. There are three sub features which I'll talk about: data and privacy, identity and access, and compliance. Because I showed you when we talk about managed security, you have posture managed secure, posture management, protection and privacy, identity access management, and stuff like that. So, with respect to data and privacy, I'll start with customer managed encryption key. I really like this feature, guys, because first of all, why I like this, I'll come to this. But first of all, just to let you know, this comes with a managed environment. So, in the new admin center, wherever you see this icon nowadays, now, please remember this is an icon which is related to managed environment. So, a managed environment setting must be enabled or turned on to use these kind of features. So, I'll talk about customer managed encryption key. So if I go here, you see I've not created any policies as of now, but just to let you know the description of it, that what is do is basically, so customer managed encryption key is, as you all might be knowing, that Power Platform obviously encrypts your data, whether it's data in rest or data in transit, right? But on top of it, if you really want to encrypt your data without even letting know the Microsoft about it or anyone anyone about it, and to protect your data from external threats, you can define your own encryption key now. So when it comes to subscription managed keys, um, I'll talk about this in here, that customer managed key, right? CMK. The short form is CMK. So when it comes to data protection by privacy, Microsoft has really gone beyond the normal encryption or a standard encryption, because that is provided by you for your data at rest or data in transit by default. But what it offers is the additional capabilities on top of that, which is customer managed key. So I'm the customer of Microsoft. I'm using Power Platform, right? I want my own encryption keys to be provided so that no one can access my data, even not the Microsoft, right? So as we all know that the data is already encrypted with respect to the standard encryption which Microsoft provides, because it's already is providing very strong Microsoft managed encryption keys by default. It actually, Microsoft stores and manages the database encryption key for all your data, so you don't have to do it. But if you want a top layer on top of that, which is CMK, customer managed keys, you can definitely go ahead and you can define your own key that is associated with your let's say, environment, which is Microsoft Dataverse environment, right? So I have a Microsoft Dataverse environment. I want my own encryption key so that even Microsoft is not able to see my data. So this is the place, this is the feature which you can definitely and should be able to leverage. There are also capabilities with respect to integration with Microsoft Purview, because Purview now, as a separate, let's say, product, but it allows you to scan all your data assets that you have on the Power Platform. So this is just one of the feature which is definitely super useful, I will say, which you should look at. Data policy, definitely I will come to it. Azure network, Azure virtual network policy. So what is this now? This is again comes with managed environments, right? I see a hand, a question over there. Maybe I will come to you, Yokesh, a little later. I'll definitely answer your questions. We will have a Q&A session at the end. But I hope, guys, I'm audible, right? Maybe someone, I'm audible, loud and
Yes,
clear.
yes, Vipul. Yep.
Great, great. Thanks. So, virtual network policy. So, earlier, what we used to do is definitely this is again a new edition. I'll talk about, and it's super useful because you are connecting to your on-premise environment from Power Platform. So earlier, what used to happen, we used to have, let's say, data gateways in let's say as a middleware to connect your Power Platform with your on-premise data, whether your on-premise data is sitting in SQL or anywhere else. So you can definitely use those on-premise or let's say data gateways. But now the concept is, let's say, virtual network policies. You can have your own specific virtual network endpoint, which will definitely give more protection to your data. So this is also a very cool feature. Another is data policy. This is super, super important and basically helps in the overall security and compliance of your Power Platform and specifically to an environment. So let's say what happens is let's create a new policy here. This is super important. Maybe you might not be doing it as a developer because you don't have the admin rights to the Power Platform Admin Center or particular environment. You are not the environment admin. But at the same time, you should know what is DLP. DLP is data loss prevention policies, definitely, which helps you in creating a layer or a secured layer, basically, to create on top of your connectors, which connectors are allowed, which connectors are business, non-business, blocked, and stuff like that. So let me create a quick policy here. I'll give a name, test policy, right? I click on next. Now, this is a super important thing, cool thing, which I want to show you is the connectors. So you can see Microsoft already has 1300 plus connectors now, which is super cool with respect to Power Platform. Maybe I will do a little zoom less so that you can see everything. All right. So you have different categories of connectors, whether business connector, non-business connector, and the blocked connector. You can definitely select any of the connector and you can move it to business, you can move it to block and stuff like that. But at the same time, what I want to show is some specific features, right? So one specific feature is the default group you see here. But before that, let me move this to SharePoint to, let's say, business. Now you see here in the business category, or let's say business type of connector, I have a standard connector with SharePoint. I move it to SharePoint, and the other connectors remain in my non-business category, which is absolutely fine. You have to remember, what you have to remember and understand is the moment you move your connectors from one category to another category or a group, precisely, I will say a group, let's say to a business group, then all those connectors which are there in the business group, you can definitely use them in your Power Apps, in your Power Automate as business connectors. At the same time, you have a setting called set default group. This is again super important because today you have 1300 plus connectors. Tomorrow, let's say you have one more connector, in which category by default it is going, right? So this is the third key takeaway from this session. I will say, guys, that please keep the default categories. This is just based on experience and my recommendations, that keep the default category as blocked, because let's say today you are using your business groups, let's say non-business groups, but tomorrow there is a new connector which you are adding, for example, in this category, then it will definitely goes to by default to the blocked category. You can definitely move it in the DLP policy from block to business, non-business, and stuff like that, and you can click on apply. So that is how, because by default it is non-business group or category which is selected by Microsoft, right? So this is again very important setting. These all are the connectors. You can definitely see the settings of these connectors. You can move to business, you can block and configure the connector. Configure connector, again, a new features which I will talk about later. But yeah, as a Power Platform admin or as an architect, which you are very interested in, let's say for your security and governance of the platform, then you should know these features. Um, Next is you see here blockable. So by default, let's say the connector says gives you the options to know whether this is connector is a blockable, yes or no, which actually tells you whether you can block your connector or you cannot block your connector. At the same time, there is something called endpoint configuration. So if I say, let's say, yes, I just want to see the connectors, which allows me to do the endpoint configuration, I click on apply. You see very few of them here. And the most important one is SQL Server, which I will definitely talk about best practice and recommendation later. But please remember that this is again a very good, cool new feature that endpoint configurations, because my connector is SQL Server, which I got it, but within the SQL Server, there could be different endpoints, right? Or configurations. When I say different endpoints and configurations, it could be, let's say, query some table, or let's say delete a row, create a row. So these are different kinds of endpoint configurations, which I, as a Power Platform admin, really want to manage it, govern it. So now you can definitely do it. I click on apply, I click on three dots, and using this, you can see here configure connector, right? So you can configure the connector endpoints, you can configure the actions as well. And there is a very detailed documentation, documentation, which is available on that. But the key takeaway here is that when you are defining your connectors, right? When you are defining your connectors, please be cognizant that if you really want to do the endpoint configurations for that connector as well. All right. So we are on the second step of the connectors. We are just creating a DLP policy here. Let's say I click on next, and now in the with respect to the custom connectors. So connectors, as you know, there are some business, non-business standard connectors given by Microsoft, but you can, on top of that, you can have your custom connectors as well. Now I will give you an example, a very good example that what you can do here. You can connect or you can add basically a connector pattern, which is super super cool because let's say I'm an admin and I have a development team. I don't want to give the access of my production endpoint to the developers. I only want to give, let's say, the access of my developer endpoint of the custom connector to my dev team. So this is the place, guys, from where you can define it and configure it. So this is the data group. I can define my host URL pattern. So I can say, let's say star.api, something, something, API dot, let's say bosch.com, contos.com, microsoft.com, and stuff like that. And I can define the order. Once I do that, I can definitely say whether it's ignored or whether it's accepted, whether it's allowed, and stuff like that. So this custom connector, while defining the DLP policy, is super important because if you are using custom connectors in your project or in your application, let's say in Power Apps or Power Automate, for example, so you have to really define and make that boundary, right, as a Power Platform admin, that which connectors are allowed, which connector endpoints are not allowed. So this is the place basically from where you can define it, right? Now, if I click on next, I go to the scope. Again, a very important feature to understand and to know that what is a scope. So I want to choose the environment to add this to the policy. So I am defining a policy here, right? I want that this policy should be available to all the environments, to the multiple environments, or maybe to the certain environments, right? Exclude certain environments. So the moment by default it is add all environments, right? The moment I select add multiple environment, you see one more step gets added, which is environment. And if I click on exclude certain environments, still this step environments remains the same because I want to define that this policy should be available to all the environments. And guys, it's super absolutely fine if you're working in an enterprise scale Power Platform setup, then you can have huge number of environments. Absolutely fine. I'm not talking about one, two, three, or let's say 10 environments within the Power Platform setup. I'm talking about, let's say, when you have huge number of, let's say, 2,000 environments and stuff like that, then this defining these kind of configuration is super important as an admin, or to know these settings is super important. So when I again go to the back default setting, which is add all environment, the environment properties goes away because I want to add this policy to the all environments. And finally, you can review it and click on submit or OK, then your DLP policy gets created. I'm just canceling it for now. So this is all about the data and privacy, where I talked about customer managed keys, CMK, super cool features. Again, comes with managed environments. I talked about DLP policies, and I talked about virtual network policies as well. Any one of you, if you want to get a detailed information, maybe we can connect offline, or maybe you can put it in the chat window. I will try to answer it. Now, coming to the next part of the security is the identity and access. Again, There are many important features, although some of them are in preview, comes with the managed environments. I'm continuously talking about managed environment, guys. You might be thinking that managed environments is the now the normal actually for the Power Platform. Actually, is the new normal, I will say, because managed environments definitely give you that flexibility and those features which does not comes with a standard environment implementations. So that's why I'm continuously talking about managed environments. And you see the preview features. One of them, preview feature, is also enabled for managed environment only. So IP firewall, I'll not talk about this. It's very straightforward. Important one is tenant isolation, guys. This is really, really super cool and super important to understand. Now, what happens is that you are working in a very big enterprise or with a very big customer or client, let's say, who manages two different tenants, not the one tenant. Generally, we talk about one tenant, and within that one tenant, we, let's say, have power apps, agents, automations, flows, and stuff like that. But let's say, assume that a company or an enterprise having multiple tenants, right? And I want to restrict cross tenant connections. So for example, I add exception, right? What I want, inbound communication should be allowed, outbound communication should be allowed, inbound and outbound allowed, not allowed. So these are the some of the exceptions which I can definitely add, which ultimately ask you for the tenant ID. So let's say if I say inbound and outbound, this is just an exception which I'm adding, because you see here, this is by default a setting, it's a set to no. So I don't want to allow the cross tenant communication or connection between the tenants. You should not allow it. But at the same time, Microsoft is allowing you to define some exceptions in the admin center, whether it's an inbound communication, outbound communication, and you just define your tenant ID here. So again, super, super cool feature just to know that what is tenant isolation. Um, Environment security groups. Yes, we all know that Power Platform is definitely governed and secured by security groups. You have Entra IDs, layer of Entra ID authentication and authorization over there. You have a layer of security groups. So Dataverse comes with own field level security, row level security, and stuff like that. Manage sharing. So this is again important feature which I want to talk about. So control how widely items can be shared. What do you want in your environment, that who can share it, and with how many people you want to share, let's say, that particular agent or app or stuff like that. So let's say if I select an environment and I click on manage sharing, you see that it is allowing me to say that Power Apps, Canvas app, what I want to limit the total individual who can share to. I can keep an eye and keep in check that what I want to do, I want to limit the number of viewers, I want to limit the number of sharing, I want to limit the number of editors of my Copilot Studio, which is currently in preview. But by using managed sharing, which again comes with managed environment feature, but it's again a super important setting or a configuration in the admin center which you should be aware of. Now you see here there is maybe information which is coming at the top. The environment is part of a group and sharing is managed there. So there is a concept called environment group, which I will very quickly cover now, but it's a part of managed compliance. So please remember, guys, we are talking about managed security here. I will come to managed compliance and then I will talk about managed operations as well a little bit. So that's why it is telling me, because this particular environment, which is the environment, the development environment. So name of my environment is development, planner demo, preview, environment features, and some default environment. So this development environment is part of an environment group, which I will talk about in managed compliance. So let me close this. Let me see. Yeah. So guest access. Again, this is a preview feature, but I just want to talk about it, that you might have, let's say, guest users, right, in your environment, or let's say in your tenant, precisely in your as your Active Directory tenant or as your Active Directory Entra IDs, you will have definitely guest users. So what you can do is you can manage the access of those particular guest users by selecting an environment. I select manage guest access, and from the Power Platform Admin Center, I can definitely block the guest users to access my environment. Again, this is super important, because you might be unknowingly or knowingly have given the access to the guest users who are not supposed to access your environment or your data. So from here, you can definitely block the guest users or the guest user access in a particular environment. All right. So these are some of the features which are related to identity and access management when it comes to managed security. Now, coming to the last one is the compliance. I talked about customer logbox auditing is very straightforward, which is dataverse auditing. It is out of the box to capture whatever is changing or whosoever is changing the data in your environment. So you can definitely leverage this feature. But what is this customer logbox? As I talked about that a logbox, right? So customer logbox is something when you want that if Microsoft support people want to access your data, it should come via some proper way or some logging mechanism should be there because Microsoft support engineers they want to access your tenant data, right? Let's say you have some issues and you want them to resolve some of the issues via support tickets or stuff like that. Then you have a feature called customer logbox, which will definitely be managed and it will be definitely need some approval mechanism from let's say admin of your organizations or your tenant. So this is again the feature which I really like. So this is all about the managed security within the Power Platform. I will switch back gears to manage governance. Now, this is the second part of my presentation today, that how you can manage the governance in this Power Platform, right? You can manage at scale, you have environment strategies, you have reactive governance, full visibility using Inventory Explorer and stuff like that. And then you, at the end, you also want to maintain the capacity and cost management, which is basically for that we have the licensing hub within the new Power Platform Admin Center. So I will straight away take you to the Power Platform Admin Center for, let's say, managed governance. So what I will do is you can see here, you have an option called manage. Now, it will definitely show you what are the environments which are available within your particular tenant. But the cool feature which I really liked is the environment groups. Why environment groups? Because let's say I'm an admin and I'm managing hundreds of environments. I can definitely group them. I can definitely apply a common policy on those all environments, right? So I don't have to go again and again to each and every individual environment and apply the policies or the configurations. So what you can do simply is just you give the group name, give some description. The description should be, in my opinion, should be good. Both are mandatory fields, and you click on save. I have already created an environment group. You can see here, I can definitely check the settings of this environment group. The most important part is I can see the environment which are there in my environment group, but at the same time, I can apply the rules of this environment group. So I don't have to go to individual environments. Let's say I want to manage or set the sharing controls for Canvas app, sharing controls for workflows, for my Copilot agents and stuff like that. I can do it right away from here. You can see sharing controls. Maybe I can increase the zoom so that you can see it very well. So sharing controls for Canvas app, sharing controls for your flows, Power Automate flows, solution checker enforcement, Power Apps component framework, maker welcome content. So you can define the rules basically within the environment group, which will be applicable to all the environments which are definitely available within your environment group. So this is again a very important feature, I will say. Next is, let's say, tenant settings. So in this setting, again, as I mentioned, that developer environment setting, Power Flow related settings, and Canvas related settings, you can definitely implement these settings within the tenant settings. One important feature is let's say, product environment assignments. This is again very important feature, and again one more key takeaway from this session. So production environment assignment, who can create and manage the production environment? Because when I talk about the environment, guys, let me tell you, recently Microsoft, what has done is, we all know that Power Platform comes with a default environment, right? Now Microsoft, from default environment, it's moving to the individual developer environment. So you have a developer environment, then let's say you have a test environment, and then you have a sandbox and production environment. And you really want to govern and manage that, who can create and manage the production environment. So you can either say everyone, let's say, can create and manage the production environment, or you say only a specific admin. And who are those admins? Basically, those are global admins, those are Power Platform service admins, or Dynamics 365 admins. So this is again very important features within the tenant settings. This is related to tenant settings, which I wanted to show you. In this data, I don't think so there is much important to tell you, because on-premise data gateway stuff like that is absolutely fine. So let me switch gears to my PPT. This is managed governance. Agent administration. This is super important. Again, I want to tell you because we all talk about agents in today's world. So let me tell you that, let's say you have a copilot hub from where a copilot hub in Power Platform Admin Center, from where you can define and manage who can see the copilot agent, who can create it, who can publish it. When it comes to publishing, who can approve it, it goes for an approval and stuff like that. So let me give you a small demo on it. So let's say I'm in the Copilot Studio and I want to create an agent. So you can definitely go ahead on the left hand navigation, you can click on agents. So you see here, when I click on agents, you can either create a new agent, which I've already created, let's say customer service, Whipple Copilot. But at the same time, you have one more by default Copilot, which is available within the Copilot Studio for you. Very great. Thanks to Microsoft. So Copilot for Microsoft 365. Within this Copilot as well, you can create your own agents. Now, let's say I'm within the Copilot, which is Copilot for Microsoft 365, and I want to create an agent here. I can create an agent here as well by clicking on this Add Agent. And this is just a super cool feature for creating agents within the Copilot for Microsoft 365 because it will just understand your natural language and it will create the agent within less than a time when you cook a Maggie, let's say, for example. So I have already went ahead and created an agent just to save the time, and I've created an agent project management advisor. I'll go inside this agent. What I want to show is I'm not here to tell you how to create an agent or stuff like that. But I'm going to show you is the governance part of it, that how you can govern and secure your agent, and especially governance. Because let's say anyone is publishing an agent within your tenant, within your Power Platform setup, but you want them that it goes to a approval mechanism, right? That's what I want to show you. So this is particularly already published. If I'm not wrong, yeah, you can see here this agent is already published. And if I go to availability options, right, you can see here that you can share the link of this agent. Definitely absolutely cool feature. For user access, you need to show to everyone in my organization, but this agent is waiting for an approval, right? And this agent is basically where it is published to Teams, it is published to Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is this current screen. So let's see the Teams admin center as well, guys. So you see here I am in the Microsoft Teams admin center now. What I want to see is that where is my agent went away. So my agent I created, agent name is Project Management Advisor, which I created in the Copilot Studio using Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now this agent is already published, but it's waiting for an approval. And why it is waiting for an approval, where it has gone, I really want to see that. So what I will do, I will come to the Teams Admin Center. Why Teams Admin Center? Because that has been published to Teams. Now, in the Teams Admin Center, you see on the left navigation, there is something called Manage Apps. You can definitely manage your apps here. You see here that one agent is pending for an approval for me. Now, how to see that? That where because I have different agent, different apps. How to see that which one is waiting for my approval? So within the Teams Admin Center, you can just click on the filter and you select what is the app type. Let's say publishing status operator is equal to submitted, and then just click on apply. And then here it goes. So you see here project management advisor I can find now in the Teams Admin Center, which is my agent, which I created in the Copilot Studio. Now in the Teams Admin Center, as an admin, what I can do is I can click on it, and you can see here either I can publish, basically approve it, or I can reject it. So once I approve it, this particular agent, which I created in the Copilot Studio, is approved. So that is how now you can manage the governance. I just wanted to show you a very small demo that once you created the agent in the Copilot Studio, how it goes to a governance mechanism of approval with the Teams admin, let's say particularly Microsoft Teams admin. So that is how you can definitely have the agent administration now, which allows you to go with a series of approvals. But at the same time, in the Power Platform Admin Center, if you go to Copilot Hub, these are the different features and recommendations which you can see that what is happening within your Microsoft Copilot, or let's say custom Copilots, extensions in Power Platform and Dynamics. So that is this is the place basically where you can see the recommendation and correct it. On the screen, you can see that it is giving me some recommendation that contact the owner of 10 apps whose form fill acceptance rates are low. So how many apps it is affecting 10 apps and when it is updated. So this is kind of a view where I get the recommendations and I can definitely correct them so that it actually increases my security, my governance across the agents. Now, definitely, as I showed you already, you can manage the agents. I showed you that you can have an approval mechanism in the Teams admin center. Now, the last part of my presentation is the managed operation. So, just a quick review and a summary what we talked about till now. So, we talked about managed security. We talked about, let's say, managed governance. Now, I'll talk about more on managed operations. So, particularly managed operations when it comes to it's mainly related to application lifecycle management because you have to operate within your power platform setup within multiple teams, right? So the best practice is because one of them you asked in the previous session asked questions that how I can deploy or move my, let's say, app from one environment to another environment. Definitely I will not recommend the manual approach nowadays just to simple export and import. I will definitely recommend deployment pipelines because that comes with the managed operations. So you can govern them. Basically, you can have an approval mechanism. So if I go back to the Power Platform Admin Center, where it is gone, yeah, here it is. So you see here you have a deployment hub altogether where in the Power Platform Admin Center, where you can definitely manage your pipelines, you can manage your catalogs, and you can see the overall overview that how it is performing, how many of your, let's say, implementations are pending to move to the other environment, stuff like that. So let's say I have implementation in my dev environment. When it is pending for approval to move to the test environment or to the production environment, I can definitely govern and see from this location or this screen itself. So this is about precisely about the managed operations. If I talk about this deployment, I mean admin as an admin, I can definitely see you can see here that 389 approvals are pending on me, and how many of them are failed deployments. So while moving the stuff from, let's say, one environment to another environment, how many of them are failed? What are the reasons? What are the recommendations? Definitely, I can go through each one of them as an admin from the deployment hub in Power Platform Admin Center. Last but not the least, I'll talk about monitoring. This is again a preview feature, although, but as a maker or as an admin, let's say, for example, I'll talk about maker first, maker experience. So I'll navigate to the Power Platform Power App Studio, where you can see there's a feature called Monitor. If I click on Monitor, it is currently a preview feature, but I can keep an eye on the apps I have made, right, and take an action to improve their performance, health, or security. So as a maker, I can definitely go to Monitor in the Power App Studio, and I can see the health, performance, everything related to my app. So how many apps I have, how many flows I have, and everything I can definitely monitor in this maker experience. But at the same time, not only the maker experience, we have the admin experience as well. So in the Power Platform Admin Center, if I go back to Power Platform Admin Center, you have something called monitor, right? So as an admin, I can definitely see my Power Platform resources, how they're performing. I can see all of them at a glance, whether it's Power Apps, whether it's Power Automate, and I can take appropriate actions. I can see the logs definitely, but I can take the appropriate actions that what is not performing well, and I can see the health. I can do a complete health checkup of my Power Platform setup from the monitor. Um, I have reached to the last of my session where I will talk about the best practices, some recommendations. I have just reached to the last or maybe the second last slide of my presentation. So these are some of my recommendation, guys, which I've already talked about. But please remember, first is restrict other tenants from accessing your tenant. So I talked about something called tenant isolation, right? So as a Power Platform Admin Center or as a solution architect, if you are managing your infra, or maybe you can guide or give your recommendations to your Power Platform admins that you should restrict other tenants from accessing your environment. Super important. By default, it is already restricted. Its toggle is no, but you should not make it yes unless with proper governance and security considerations. Second is limit which admins who can create the production environment. I showed you this as well. So in the tenant settings, when you go to manage in Power Platform Admin Center, you should limit that who can create the production environment. It should not be everyone, right? Then you set a DLP policy filter for blockable connectors and block all the ones that are not critical. Super important, guys. So we saw in the DLP policy demo when I showed you that there are three categories or groups, for example, business, non-business, or blog. So whatever you feel as a Power Platform Admin Center that you don't want the devs or the dev teams to access those connectors while developing as a makers while developing Power Apps or Power Automate. So you should bring them to the blog category. Then Other one is set the default group in your DLP policy to blocked. This also I talked about, that whenever there is a new connector set appear, you can define them then in which category or group they want to be present in. The best practice and recommendation, this is just based on my experience as well, that you should make the default group as blocked. Now, the last two is related. Be careful of actions that override other actions. For example, let's say you have a SQL connector, right? So I showed you in the while creating the DLP policy, right? That if it is a SQL server, you can configure the endpoints. So you should be very cognizant that, let's say, if you disable the delete row action, if you delete an endpoint called delete row or action, the user should not get the get around if you don't block the custom query action. Because let's say I do a custom query, I have unblocked it, but I have blocked the delete row. So what the developers or the others can do is they can use the custom query action and still they can delete the row. So when you are using, let's say, endpoint configurations or managing it within the Power Platform Admin Center, please be aware that for the particular connectors, you should be configuring it, or the endpoints, you should be configuring it with very vigilance. Last but not the least, this is just some of the best practices, guys. If your devs need to use a connector but should not be connecting to the prod environment, block the prod endpoint but allow the dev. This also I talked about, that which endpoints you should allow and which endpoints you should ignore in the Power Platform Admin Center. I gave you an example. Let's say your dev team you have a custom connector. Your dev team wants to access the dev environment endpoint, but obviously not the production endpoint. So in that case, you should be it should be cognizant to the Power Platform Admin Center that which endpoints I should restrict and I should not restrict. So here I have reached to the end of my session. Last, I want to share some of the important resources. It's not the end of the journey, guys. Whatever I showed you today, whether it's managed governance, managed security, or managed operation, it's not the end of the journey, right? We test it, we gain the experience, we gain the knowledge, and then we implement it. So that is how the path should be. So I showed you about the three pillars, but at the same time, there are some white papers from Microsoft available. There is totally together a good framework, which I've created a video also on. I will put in the chat window, which is called Power Platform Well Architected. So Power Platform Well Architected, it's kind of it gives you the best practices basically for your architecture guidance, some tools, what you can use to make basically the informed decisions, right, during your planning implementation of a particular project. So please go through it. And last, I will also talk about, let's say, COE Starter Kit. So this is a tool which you definitely should leverage to gain insights and control over your environment. So, but this is not the end of the journey. Please keep learning and keep sharing in the community. Thanks a lot.